Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Turin here with another Warhammer Total War online commentary. In this particular battle, I'll be playing the Dwarves, and I'm going to be facing off against the Beastmen, so definitely a fun matchup. And as you guys know, I usually really like to bring Slayers in this matchup, but today I decided to change things up and go with the Royal DAWI AIRFORCE, so that's going to be the new term for them. I actually have three groups of gyrocopters with the standard steam cannons here, because obviously, one of the counters to this is Centaurs with throwing axes, or mass hordes of Ungor raiders and those type of things, or even Manticores. And the steam cannon equivalent, though they do have relatively poor accuracy, I actually don't think it's that bad, but they do really good against Ungor raiders. They can rout them so quickly with that anti-infantry, and they hit pretty darn hard, so I'm really a fan of these guys in this matchup. And then the secondary line backing up, I have the heavy-duty bombers in the back, so they have their escorts up here, and then in the back, I do have the gyrocopters with the brimstone guns. So these guys are really cool. Anti-large bonus, which is great against almost all Beastmen units that are of value, and then it also does have a nice little armor-piercing missile, so these are just the anti-Gorbel unit, and they do really well for you. So again, I would advise them in this matchup. I've had pretty good success myself, and I've always tried to bring Iron Drakes, and Iron Drakes can work depending on how well your opponent micros, but Gorbels can just run through your stuff. Again, I'm not of the opinion that they're overpowered, but Beastmen need a unit like that, because a lot of the units and infantry on their roster aren't the greatest. So having these units obviously are definitely help to balance them out a little bit. But anyways, these guys are very important for that. And obviously, in investing so much in the Royal DAWI AIRFORCE, I don't have the best infantry corps, but I do have some Dwarf warriors in the front line who are supported by a Rune Lord, 2 Thanes, as well as a Runesmith. So these guys are pretty good. I mean, just rank and file, and they do pretty darn good against the Beastmen infantry. The Beastmen Ungors and, most of those Ungor type units are very, they don't hit hard. They don't have the highest, melee stats. And these guys actually have 41 melee defense when buffed right now. So that's really good, I mean, for how much you're paying. So big fan of those guys, and they do have the charge defense against Minotaurs, which is quite nice. I also have some Dwarf warriors in the back. I have the Grumbling Guard here in the back line, who are great. These guys, obviously pretty good against Gorbels with their armor piercing and their other various stats, but on that same note, they provide that Vigor aura, which is huge. And in the Beastmen matchup, especially when you're trying to buy time for gyrocopters and things like that, these guys are absolutely essential. So again, I didn't kind of pick up on this right when the DLC came out, but these guys are just absolutely essential in most Dwarf builds, in my opinion. So I also do have the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, who have unfortunately been the first casualties of this battle. Some of them are getting up, but it's definitely a tragic sight to see the Dwarves laying there still. But it looks like most of them are getting up, actually, except this guy. He's pretty done for. But yeah, that's about it for my army. So let's get right into my opponent. So he does have some Centaurs with great weapons over here. He has just mainly a fodder line of Ungor, so he's going with a relatively wide formation, which is fine. Going against the Dwarves sometimes, when you're just coming right down the pipe into this kind of vacuum of Wrath and Ruin here, we can call it, it's a little tough. So going wide and kind of flanking around and using the mobility of the Beastman is definitely a good play there. So definitely a fan of his formation. So he has just a bunch of Ungor Spearherds here, and you can see my gyrocopters getting right into his Ungor Raiders back here. He also has 2 Gorbels. He has Malagor, obviously going to summon another Cygor. Cygors are pretty good against the Dwarves, who are usually pretty bunched. And he also has 2 groups of Minotaurs with great weapons. And I'm not sure. I actually have to look at it this game, because do the Minotaurs with great weapons have higher combat stats in some regard than the shielded equivalent? Because I would think against the Dwarves, the shields would be better, but obviously, there's not really any large units for them to hit other than if the gyrocopters land, but maybe they hit harder or something. I'll have to take a look at that. So anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So right now you can see my gyrocopters are doing their bombing runs, and the first thing you have to do, obviously, if you're going with this type of a gyro build, is just take out the things that can essentially kill your gyrocopters. So right here I have my steam cannons kind of going to work on these guys, and they're doing really good work, and you can see the bombing runs are pretty effective, and they do a nice little bit of damage, bringing them down to, let's go ahead and check their models right now, down to 78. They're actually wavering, and that one actually got decapitated by the steam, so definitely a powerful beam there. So this other group will probably follow in suit and won't last much longer, but you can see Malagor summoning his second Cygor, which is definitely going to be hard for me to deal with. But on that same note, the gyrocopters with brimstone guns are focusing the Gorbels. So the Gorbels are taking a lot of damage already. You can see they're already down to like 60%, which is huge, because Gorbels, as you guys have seen in most of my Dwarf replays, and probably from other YouTubers as well, is Gorbels are one of always the last units standing, just kind of winning that really atrocious battle. So anything you can do to kill them is very valuable there. So anyways, we'll get into the front line. The Dwarf Warriors have engaged with the Ungors, and now the Gorbels, having found their home, I think they were just waiting to see where my Lord would go. They're obviously just going to go right after him. So they mash right into these Dwarves, which is really tough, but thankfully I do have the Brimstones just constantly pressuring them. But of course, most Beastmen players, the first thing they're going to do is just find your Lord and just start chasing him, and just go balls deep on that. So the first thing I do is retaliate by kind of just getting him and just playing Mario Kart here. I'm kind of just going around and just doing laps here and allowing my infantry to hit these guys and allow the gyrocopters with with brimstone guns to really apply pressure. So he comes in, he rams them with his anvil, and then he just turns around and pieces out. He's done with those guys. So, but still the Thane and the other units are doing a little bit of damage. Obviously Gorbles do have a lot of armor, so without armor-piercing units, you're not going to do the most, but I was able to win this little infantry battle over here, and these dwarves are going to come in and kind of sandwich and congest these big units here, which is definitely good. Because basically kind of the whole focal point of the strategy is to allow time for my gyrocopters to do their thing. So you can see the steam cannons were able to make quick work of the Ungor Raiders, having taken minimal damage. Now they're going to get in here, and he does get a nice flank on me with these centaurs here, but thankfully the steam cannons just tear these guys to shreds. You can see their models tanking rapidly. The Rune of Wrath and Rune comes in, and these guys are just going to get absolutely dumpstered by the dwarves here. They're getting bombed. They're just getting all kinds of stuff thrown at them. So definitely very good, but I didn't get to show you guys, but my opponent had a really nice charge. He actually outflanked me here. He came in and just laid the smackdown on my Grumbling Guard and took them from about 80 models or 78 models to 65 or so. So definitely very well played there. But the Grumbling Guard, very high leadership unit. They're still confident despite all that, and they're doing a pretty good job fighting against Minotaurs, though I should have them on the Gorbles, and I'm sure I will adjust them shortly. So the Lords have kind of gotten in a little bit of Mortal Kombat here. They're fighting. Malagor isn't the best combatant himself. They have about the same weapon strength, but he only has 15 armor. So it's advantageous for me, but unfortunately the Gorble bros are coming over, and they're doing some good work here, and my Lord is definitely not happy. You can see he's steady. He's scurrying away right now, and I was just trying to get to his fellow DAWI here to protect him. And obviously the Grumbling Guard, since their Lord was in danger, and they're going to get in there and get a nice little wrap on Malagor, who's also taking some steam to the face. And you can see those Cygors on that same time are continuing to bomb, and I think they actually just killed like 10 of their own models with the Ungor. So that's something that against the Beastmen, if they are playing Cygors, just try and engage as quickly as you can. You know, just don't play that attrition game with them, because they'll just chunk huge groups of units. And at least if you're engaged with them, they'll hit their own units, which, will usually favor them because most of their infantry are fodder, but still, you got to get in there. So you can see the steam cannons are shooting in and just kind of doing some serious work on Malagor. You can see they've tanked his health hardcore, so I was very happy, and now he's broken. So over here, the Rune Lord is continuing to fight. He did use his Master Rune of Wrath and Rune, which will just absolutely destroy these guys. You can see they're broken. They probably won't be back. And the gyrocopters also come in, and they're just cutting these guys to shreds. But unfortunately, that Gorble is just a bloodhound here, just chasing around my Lord, and no mercy. He's got his horns. But one thing that's really nice about the Rune Lord, and you guys have seen in replays of mine when I use Grombrindle or any of those other dwarf lords, is they get knocked around. If they have one Gorble hitting him and the other one just cycle charging, you're literally going to get nothing done. You're just going to get punished. But when you put this guy on the anvil, he doesn't get knocked around. He can simply just peace out and go as he pleases, and he's not going to really get manipulated and controlled as much by the Gorble. So really nice there. So thankfully, these guys finally used his Potion of Toughness, and I believe this other one already used his earlier. This was the one that was being focused by the gyrocopters with the brimstone guns, and you can see the Cygors continuing to bomb here. But the Dwarves are finally starting to stabilize, and you can see the Gorbles in here are starting to take a beat down from the Thane, and the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass also hit pretty hard. Well, relatively speaking, they have pretty good combat stats, and they're getting in there with their flaming attacks, doing a bit of work, but unfortunately my Rune Lord's having trouble, and those Minotaurs were able to kind of clean up my flank over here. You can see this Thane man, he's laying down for a long time. I felt like that was abnormally long. I wonder if, he's still fresh, too. I was going to say, if their, fatigue is low, I wonder if it takes them longer to get up. Probably not. But anyways, they get in here, and they should be able to finish off this Gorble. You can see the Runesmith and his Thane buddy are getting in there, but this Gorble broke, and oh man, he just got clubbed by that guy. So I like how he just stops the cheer right there. That's pretty great. So over here, the Rune Lord, though, definitely don't want to be cheering while your Lord is getting smacked down by all these Gorbles and other units, where finally one of their bonuses is pertinent, because I believe he does count as a large unit. So he's taking those bonuses and getting his armor pierced and all kinds of stuff, and these guys are just so much faster. They're definitely not going to be able to get away here. So, but the gyrocopters are still continuing to support. They're shooting down. They're doing their thing, and the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass were able to clean up some of these units. But unfortunately, my opponent does have a pretty hefty little force over here, and you can see the power bar is still heavily in my opponent's favor, actually. So I have 112 troops to his 170. He has two groups of Ungors who are pretty low on ammo. This one actually is full because I believe it routed further back, and he does have two Cygors, both of whom are almost out of ammo as well. So very, very tight battle here. I have a lot of units who have routed, but will be coming back shortly. This Gorble in here is just going fisticuffs with my gyrocopters, but something people often underestimate about gyrocopters is they actually have about 66 weapon strength, I believe, on their melee attacks, so they hit pretty hard. Even against armored units, they're going to get in there and do some work. So I do realize that these Ungors are really starting to wear me down, so I pull my gyrocopters in, and they're just going to absolutely womp on these guys. I love that charge. It's kind of cool. They kind of do turn their blades, but it would be funny if they were able to... Yeah, right there. Okay, so he kind of does a little spinning attack and gets him with the blades, but I wanted to shut down both those groups and just kind of keep them off the battlefield because they were starting to generate pretty good value against my tattered dwarf forces. So they're in a very good situation here. And gyrocopters actually have, how much armor do they have? Let's go ahead and take a look. So they have 100 armor. So these guys with their pretty pitiful stats aren't going to do much against them. So thankfully for me, I was able to clean up the Gorbles. I did lose my Rune Lord, but I was also able to break Malagor, and this gyrocopter is not going to let him forget that. It's going to chase him and just keep ramming him and hopefully keep him off the battlefield. So I do have the last march of the Thanes here. They're going up to try and make their people proud. You can see they're charging right towards that Cygor, and I'm kind of trying to keep my forces relatively split. So I have some over here, some over here. But that Cygor, look at this freaking MLB arm right here. He just freaking tags both of those guys. Just knocks them both down, and then while they're down, another boulder comes, freaking crushes him. Definitely pretty ridiculous. But Turin Smith, he's still steady. This guy actually is eager. So that's a really good situation. And a lot of the dwarves, though they're freaking so low, I mean, they're shaken, but they're still steady. And these are low-tier dwarf infantry. These are just dwarf warriors. And, they're staying in the fight here. They're not giving up. And some of these gyrocopters got a little antsy, but, I wanted to shut them down from throwing boulders for a second to allow my infantry to get a little closer. So you can see the Thanes and the other guys are going to get in here. I do use a Rune of Wrath and Rune, even though it's barely going to do anything against a single large target like this. I just had to get in there and do anything I could. So thankfully the Thanes are in really good health. I have one that's full health, and I'm not sure if this guy used his potion, but they do use the Rune of Oath and Steel, which isn't the most pertinent considering that the Cygor probably has a ton of armor piercing damage. But still, everything helps in this particular situation. So this guy's getting low. You can see his leadership is starting to tank. He's really close to going. But he's still, steady, unfortunately. And, a lot of my units, I believe they do cause terror. Let's go ahead and look. Yes, they do. So he was able to terrorize a few of my units who will hopefully come back from rout. I don't have the psychology bonus from my Rune Lord anymore, so unfortunately I'm in a little bit of trouble there. This Gorbel did come back here, and man, this Gorbel is just an absolute champ. Their leader's dead. They don't have much left in their army at all. And he's continuing to fight. He's still steady, and despite being at 200 HP, he's still fighting, which is pretty incredible. But the dwarves are they're pretty ferocious here. You can see the Thane getting in there and karate chopping him, and this Thane's in pretty darn good health. And Thanes have good defensive stats as well, so they can stay in trade. And there he goes, down goes the Gorbel. So right now, fortunately, the Giants are stomping the yard, but this Thane is just being an absolute hero right now. He has the Rune of Negation. He's getting stomped all over. He's still fighting like a champ. He's doing his thing, and the rest of the dwarves rush in to the aid of their brother. So I do have several groups kind of waddling in here. Most of them are probably pretty exhausted from this long, atrocious battle, but they're still doing their thing. This Cygor is at about 10 or 15%. This other group, this other Cygor is full health. So thankfully this one is able to break, and it probably won't be coming back, but this guy seeing that his buddy is routed, now that the bar is more in my favor, his leadership certainly won't last as long. He's probably going to break from army losses. So, man, what a close fight this was. So we can go ahead and fast forward here just to get to the end, but great battle. Really, really well played by my opponent. Really fun. And I hope you guys enjoyed the Royal DAWI Air Force. I think that'll be the title of this particular game. But you can see the Rune Lord and the low-tier Dwarf Warriors. I mean, they 52 kills, 85. They took the beating of those Minotaurs and Gorbals and Cygors like champs. Definitely very proud of the guys, and did pretty well. The Steam Cannons racked up a lot of infantry kills, and obviously the Gyrocopters did their job on the Gorbals. So I like this build. Definitely would consider doing it again, but it's one of those builds that if someone knows what you're playing, it's very easy to counter. That's partially why I changed my name a lot. You guys always ask me why I changed my name. One is obviously, the main thing is just that so people don't know my builds, because I tend to use very repetitive builds, and I do like to experiment with new things. But again, when I am playing just casually or trying to climb ladder or something, which hasn't really been the focal point of my my playing here, but I don't want them to know what I'm playing, so I try to mix it up and surprise people every time. And my opponent's forces, the Gorbals did pretty good. Malagor, he obviously summoned a Cygor, which, did a ton of damage and obviously fought to the end. His infantry corps, very low tier, but, with the Beastmen, you're going to get most of your value out of your Gorbals and Minotaurs and Cygors anyway. So, anyways, really well played to my opponent. Trader trumped. I look forward to seeing you again on ladder, and I hope you guys enjoyed that Dwarf cast. Have an excellent night, and take care.